I'm going to copy Craig and ask a slightly different version of his question, which was instead of what is the killer app, what are the killer apps? I mean, what do you guys see as kind of driving this? And we'll start with you, Randy, and go down the line here.
Absolutely, and folks can have their own flavor of this in terms of answer, but what we've seen in most of the killer apps are twofold, and they're usually somehow video related. So it's your security video assets that you'll see residential Ring doorbells, and then as well as then the gaming visualization activities that, again, just the amount of content that's going over these networks from the endpoints. Again, these are, whether they're managed or unmanaged devices, are driving exponential increase in what's going to need to be transported.
Yeah, and Julie, maybe you can touch on that too. From a wholesale network provider, are you seeing kind of specialized providers for certain applications?
This will be a little bit different from the house, because the house you can see that this will be streaming, but it depends on the industry. Like for example, mining. We saw a lot of mining, and this will be a lot of telemetry. And IoT, I saw some examples like IoT is not the big traffic, but small packets. And this can be pointing over capacity in the routers that I had experience with a mobile customer. When they deployed the IoT, they had to change all the access router in the IP RAN because of the IoT traffic start to impact on how many packets, not the size of the packet, but the number of small packets going through their network. So IoT can be also a killer.
Interesting. Literally a killer app. And Mike, from a slicing perspective, I'm wondering, can you create truly converged networks where you know, maybe it's a data center or a remote airport tower or whatever, where you can meet the latency and the quality and demand and sort of things? Why don't you talk to that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so we talked about, and we've talked about this for years, which is the convergence of residential services, business services, and some of the overall transport services that could go across one infrastructure. You know, having the capacity of 50 gig, having the network slicing and PON slicing capabilities that can be part of this next generation PON network, we think that we can get to that true converged architecture. We think, as I said earlier in the slide presentation, that maybe PON moves beyond just an access layer technology to an access and aggregation layer technology. So I think that by the consolidation of this, it will simplify the network.
Yeah, and how are you looking at it, Patrick, as far as simplification and so forth?
I'm sorry?
Oh, what are your thoughts on that as far as simplification and being able to deliver new apps for one pipe?
I think it's definitely a look forward in that, in the way the apps are used today, and then if we're able to aggregate, traffic and aggregate that, path for us going forward, then it's definitely going to help us with our network. One of the biggest areas we see is with the ONTs and ONUs, at the site, and as we're talking with our MDUs and our big, deployments there, if we can aggregate that traffic, at that layer, at that edge layer, and aggregate that traffic there, it saves us from having to do it back in the network, which also helps us with our bandwidth between the two.
Mm-hmm. From a resiliency standpoint, and this is more maybe bigger picture of a resiliency of a network from a community, from a societal standpoint, right? So is there drivers that maybe having multiple networks is a good thing, and doing things like backup and stuff like that? Does that become kind of an inherent part of maybe how you monetize it? You don't necessarily take the whole pie, but you consciously are taking part of it, knowing that you're part of a more resilient network. Well, maybe you can comment. I don't know if there's a question there, but
can be one opportunity because, like, for example, the Cloud Code demo we did in Network X last year.
Yeah, the innovation demo and Network X.
The innovation demo. We had the AGF integrating the mobile and the fiber. And we are using this, for example, for some wholesale customer with private 5G and fiber as a redundancy. So this can increase the resilience, But by the other side, I'm removing the mobile traffic as well in the fiber because fiber has also much more bandwidth. So for the video opportunities for this kind of wholesale, uh, you are providing two kind of access servers. And this kind of services can be in the different tier one enterprise customers. Like we have a big bank using this. We are proposing 2 weeks from now in the DPW for a port automation, and this can be a lot of other use cases.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. That was a plug for the Broadband Forum's innovation demonstrations, which in that case, it was the wireless wireline convergence standards. And in fact, when you were talking, Mike, I was thinking about that as far as some of the slicing opportunities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that could be another use case for the 5G wireless wireline convergence. And then also too, the consolidation of some of those network functions that we talked about. You know, traffic management function is part of an AGF type function. If you look, really traffic management as a function lives in the cable broadband area. It lives in the PON in DSL. It lived in the B&G. For the 5G WWC, it lived in a AGF. And then for wireless, it lived in a user plane function, a UPF. All of those things are making sure that traffic management is enforced at those different layers of the network and those different technologies. There are some things that we're going to see in the future where there is going to be consolidation of like for example, 5G wireless wireline, where you'll have a connection with a fiber PON, and you'll also have that same device have a connection then to the wireless network, the 5G network. And then some device needs to stitch that together at the service layer, and that could be a consolidated network element, increasing the reliability and really overall reducing the complexity. Okay.
And also potentially offering new services. I have a near-term example where I actually didn't get the fiber to the home because I needed the service today. If that same provider had both solutions, I could have started with the fixed wireless access and then easily transitioned to fiber to the home. But now I'm never going to make that transition, and the fiber to the home customer lost my mom as a customer because, and it had nothing to do with the quality in a sense. Oh, go ahead.
We're
Patrick,
actually
and then you, Randy.
we're actually seeing something like that as well, where we may go into an area where we are in the active process of maybe changing out equipment or something like that. So if we could provide, a wireless access point and even backhaul it over our fiber, then that's some of the areas where we could see, one, it'll help us as we go to expand our network and even move into areas where we don't offer fiber yet, but yet it's on the roadmap. Then that gives us an opportunity there to provide that. Plus, it does give us that functionality of redundancy, like in the areas where we do have DIA direct fiber customers. That gives us that opportunity with that wireless backhaul to say, okay, now we do have a solution for a redundant. So if your fiber does go down, we have a way to help provide service, which is also over our fiber, but it's based off a wireless connection too.
Yeah, back to that resiliency thing. Randy.
Yeah, so just expand, I think, on some of the points here, and that the choices aren't just limited to a single operator in terms of this resiliency. You could have a choice to tune to some other operator, if you will, right? So we've seen that in the wireless world, that you can switch your service provider by switching your eSIM or having a multiple way for access points, right? So the idea that there's lots of operators out there providing coverage, some maybe sooner than later, but you still, who has the control and who can make the choice? That is an offer of resiliency as well, that you're not just confined to a single solution. Yeah,
so you're actually growing the pie bigger in a sense, right? Sure. So that everyone wins, and that's a great thing. One of the things, and I know this wasn't kind of in our topic of list, but culture. I kind of sense the culture thing. I think Randy, you might have mentioned the silos and stuff, and I'm wondering from an incumbent operator, whether large or small, versus someone who's starting from scratch. Is that a real strategic advantage for that new operator to be able to start without the silos?
Might be a better question for the operator, right? So versus the legacy infrastructure and where things are at, and where some new players and entrants into the space can be. So it's going to be a mix going forward anyway. So that combination of information, the combination of legacy and going forward are going to be there for many more years to come. So I'll let some others comment on this as well.
From the open access and the neutral network, actually, this is enabled to have more ISPs, more greenfield, and this is incentivizes the competition. And when we see, for example, in the case of the countries that is starting to have a lot of them, I saw a lot of new ISPs growing, and this is decreasing the prices offer. But what's the big thing, in my opinion? The tier ones are looking for the business side and have more revenue. The workforce management that's more OpEx, they are giving to the small ISPs, so they don't need to go into the house of the customer. So in this decreases their OpEx and increase their revenue because this small ISPs will be paid for that.
Yeah. And Mike, from your perspective, do you have any thoughts on culture and?
Okay, so I guess from a culture perspective, I'd probably say that when you look at network consolidation or looking at different layers of the network that could be consolidated to a particular technology, to fewer network elements, you have in many areas, service providers, you might have different organizations that would typically have played a role or maybe owned a particular layer or technology. And what would have to happen, and what we found is that really getting these teams together at the right levels, and then showing them the economics of both capex and opex as the driving force here that they could enable and could use. And many of them are seeing that that's the best path.
Yeah, and Patrick, from an operator who has to deploy, has to support DOCSIS, has to support FTTH, and it's got these MDUs. My gosh, it's got to be a challenge.
It's definitely a challenge. Again, you mentioned overbuilders, and we see that, in our areas as well. Not to say that we're not overbuilders as well. We see areas where there's definitely opportunity for growth, and that is a challenge, because if you're on say an incumbent HFC network, we really have to advance our network as well to keep up with demand as well. Or we will have overbuilders come in with fiber and overbuild us and start losing revenue there. So other areas where we see those opportunities as well is welcoming and embracing that open access, and possibly allowing overbuilders to come in and to do that. I know that sounds very strange, but there again, it's competition. It drives the market. But
Back to that bigger pie for everyone, right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, and it may be something where we could leverage some of our fiber that's in place for them, and vice versa. Sell them dark fiber, them sell us dark fiber, that kind of thing, where we can.
Yeah, and then if you can converge it, it's even better, right? From that.
Right.
Yeah, and so from a, why don't we continue on that from an open access standpoint, and I'd let you take the lead on this, Julie, because that was kind of the theme of yours, but I want everyone to jump in. But open access, we think of the, basically you've got a network and you're allowing multiple people on it, but obviously it's much more complex. How do the open APIs kind of play into that and the importance of it?
Yeah. The open APIs actually is the main thing to do the integration. So we do a lot of open API integration, like TM Forum, for the business perspective. So one company is talking with another one to automate using this API. But you also need the API from the network side. So some of these open APIs we integrate directly with the EMSs from each of the network vendors, or we have something over the service layer like Camara. Camara can work not only with mobile, can work with any access technology. And so in the service layer can be Camara, and this will be the resource layer. So that's why I put it in my presentation: resource, services, and the business side. And all these APIs ecosystem is one of the part of the digital transformation. And so this is the enabler that you will be zero touch operation orchestration.
Thank you. Yeah, and Randy, I appreciate you mentioning the TR-471, the OB UDPST project. It's an open source, open broadband project, and I am fortunate to every couple of weeks listen into it. And it's just amazing the power of the data that they're starting to pull out. It's much more than just a speed test.
Indeed. So if those folks are familiar with the older standard, the TR-143, that's makes you wish for more, right? So the limitations have now kind of been broken down, those boundaries with the 471 capabilities that give you the granularity of information that you had wished and requested, and it helps especially in terms of streaming situations. So I just thought earlier as well, this the symmetrical type of data going back and forth is that it's becoming a stronger and stronger need that the endpoints are delivering that data, particularly the video content that I mentioned. So the speed tests make a huge difference in understanding the delay, the packet loss, the capacity issues that are actually taken all the way from those streaming devices at the end.
Yeah, and I think, unless there's some questions from the audience, but I've got one on the symmetry, and I think Mike and Patrick, if you guys want to end on that, you had mentioned the flexibility of being able to be symmetric when you need to, Mike. So why don't you talk to that, and then I'll ask you, Patrick.
Yeah, so one of the things I brought up in on the presentation is the capability is of like 50 gig PON technology to support 50 gig by 25 gig, it's sort of asymmetric, and then 50 gig by 50 gig ONUs. That's one area of economic flexibility that the operators will have with this next generation PON technology. And then also too, we talked about maybe some of the speeds. So we're seeing, certainly a majority of the traffic is still downstream. We will see, more upstream traffic, as some were mentioned here. And but as more and more processing happens, in the cloud, maybe like for example, security cameras, they're going to be recording video. That video needs to be sent to the cloud and then downloaded on a Wi-Fi device somewhere or wireless device somewhere else. So we're going to be seeing much more growth in terms of the upstream traffic as well. So symmetrical tiers certainly are going to be something of interest to the operators.
And Patrick, it sounded like it's driving some of your deployments.
Absolutely. It seems like you can't walk out into public without somebody streaming something. Content creators are out there. We see it all the time where, you're constantly seeing videos uploaded. I mean, you talked about killer apps, you look at, Instagram and some of the other apps that are out there where people are uploading videos, TikTok, things like this. Those are the things that are kind of driving that need for that upstream bandwidth. Storage is expensive. When you start storing stuff up in the cloud and things like that, that becomes expensive over time. So if I can have it locally and be able to turn around and have a symmetrical, connection upstream and downstream, then that gives me that opportunity to help as I create and provide that content, and it gives me a way to offload that content quicker without having to send it up to a cloud or to a different place. And I can see where companies that do provide apps and things like this would love that, because they no longer have to worry about keeping as much storage and availability for those networks or for those content.
Well, we are recording this, but we're not streaming it live, so unfortunately. But we do. I do want to thank all of our speakers. Thank you very much. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you for everyone for sticking it through. Check us out at the trade show floor, booth POC4. So thank you again. I think I said everything right. Oh, the Base Summit coming to Munich at the end of the month, of course. It's going to be a lot of fun.